Hello,
Hello, how's it going?
going good. How about you?
I'm all right. Let's see
Mm.
here. I'm gonna see if Max is.
Oh, Max said yesterday he's not gonna be able to make it because he's traveling.
Yep, I was gonna say actually. No, I saw Max in person yesterday, so that's why I was like, I don't know that he's back wherever he's going. So,
Oh, are you in Seattle? I didn't know that.
uh, I am. Yeah, I'm actually down in Pierce County, but I was up in Seattle yesterday.
Ah, okay. Well, if you are ever in Seattle area, feel free to ping me. Hope
Okay.
we can meet in person someday.
You bet. No, I'll let you know. Yeah, I don't go up there very often, but I knew Max was going to be around yesterday, so I went to have lunch with him. So,
Yeah,
um, but
wonderful. Where did you
yeah,
guys go?
we were just at the office.
Ah,
Um, but what was I gonna say? No, I was gonna say is like on a Saturday, it only takes me like 45 minutes, maybe even 40 to get there. But like on middle of the week, it's like
yeah,
an hour and 45.
yeah, yeah. You
So
can't travel
I
on
don't do it.
on.
I normally don't do it therefore.
Yeah, yeah. You can't travel on weekdays, and it's pretty bad.
Yep.
Hey, Shaltash.
Hello. Looks like we didn't change the meeting on Zoom, right? It still showed at 9 for me.
It shows 10 for me on the uh uh
I-
community meeting notes.
It does, but you know what? I put a note actually earlier today that you're probably looking at, Sartash, that the invite itself still is 9 inside, but I don't have
Yeah,
permissions to change
I
that.
looked inside the Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about the Zoom, but I know that
Yeah,
the
the
Google
calendar
count
in,
it says that the invite's for 10, but if you actually click on that calendar invite, it's for 9.
yeah. Just the link header is changed.
Yeah, I see. Can I edit this? I don't know. Let me try. Save. Can you check now, Andrew?
Let's see here. I'm
It
gonna look right now.
still
Oh, I didn't.
says
No, no.
9.
I
Yeah, it's still.
saved it, but it's still. Yeah.
Oh, it probably saved it locally. No, it's still 10. I don't know who owns it. I don't have permissions, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
it
I'll
still
just
says
it also
10.
won't tell me who does. Therefore,
Right.
I don't know. Not a big deal for today, but that would potentially
Yeah,
contribute to the confusion if people are just looking at their calendars.
maybe just replace the whole link, create a new and then replace the link.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's coming from like a special calendar, like is somebody's calendar in particular.
Oh yeah, don't replace that calendar. I
Yeah,
think it's coming from like some calendar.
yeah, that's what I say. It's probably like a shared calendar, so you probably have to figure out who's got ownership on it.
Yeah, I think Xander was working on getting it on the CNCF calendar.
Oh, okay, okay.
Um, um, Hello, Sigotlit.
Hello. Sorry, I forgot I
It
logged in.
came with the prestige.
Yes.
I really hate that Zoom kind of just like use like the last one and instead of let me sign out and come back. Okay, I'll be back.
Did you change your camera, Sartash? Like webcam?
No.
You are right now super clear.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah.
I think Zoom is better than Teams. Yeah. Usually Xander's camera also takes a lot of bandwidth. When he joins, my camera quality drops. In Zoom, it also kind of zooms in. It's kind of interesting.
Does it?
Yeah, I mean, for
I-
me, like compared to the Teams, I think it's zoomed in.
Acha, oh, okay. So you are saying for you, if you are viewing yourself in the screen,
Yeah.
you feel it a little.
Yeah.
Because
something like
I didn't notice any difference between you here and on your team.
Oh, I think it's the so I don't turn on the HD on the Zoom one. Let me see. Okay, so see it's
So
zoomed out.
now now you are zoomed out right now.
Yeah,
like-
is it clearer now?
No, I mean the quality is about the same, but
Hmm.
you look smaller
Yeah,
because the frame is now
yeah. I think
wider.
it is the 720p 1080p. Oh, I mean I don't actually have a 1080p camera. It's probably like 480p versus 720p. I don't know. Hello.
Hello. Do we have any topics today?
We don't have any topics. I don't think Max can make it today.
I'm not expecting him to. He's at a all day.
Yeah, he said yesterday he's not gonna make it on the Slack. I think.
Jay, did you want to go through the enforcement action doc?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys have, did you had a chance have a chance to go look at the changes on the design or not? Then
I
I
did
can walk.
not. So maybe you can kind of quickly go through the changes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Let me
And then
just.
you synced up with Max, right?
Yeah, I did.
Aligned
I
on
did.
that one. Okay, awesome.
Okay, cool. Okay, let me just share my screen. Where do I share my screen from?
There's a green button at the bottom. Because it's green, you ignore it.
Oh
at
yeah,
least every time.
yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the change on the current design was that we add one more enforcement action called none, which basically means that if just the enforcement action none is defined, the whole constraint is omitted from from all processes. But if enforcement action is defined as none and we have the list of enforcement actions as well, then we enforce those. Because for backward compatibilities, right, like if the none is not included in the design itself, then it's kind of confusing, because now if enforcement action is set to deny and we have bunch of things defined in enforcement actions as well, we don't know what to enforce, we don't know what to make of it when there are missing entries in enforcement actions. Let's say if someone specifically defines a webhook in enforcement action and globally it is denied, then it's more complicated to achieve backward compatibility and make sense of it as a whole. So we ended up on adding one more enforcement action as none to get around all those problems. But what this means is that when we move forward with the design now, we can't really deprecate the singular field that is enforcement action, because we depend on it to be none in order to enforce what is there in the list of actions. Does it make sense? Yeah, so that was the only change for the original design that we initially discussed.
And it sounds like we added none and then publish too, right? Publish is also new.
Publish is just like as a discussion right now. It's not like we can hopefully edit in the future when we actually have the implementation mechanism behind it. Right now adding it doesn't make sense, but it's just an idea that Max proposed, right? For instance, he also discussed log being an enforcement action. So like how many enforcement actions do we need there? We still need to figure out, but right now for starters, we would definitely go with the 4, deny, warn, dry run, and none. Publish is just to incorporate the initial discussions that we had around this design, and then we expanded upon the 4th option, right? So this is kind of final one.
So just to clarify, because the words are, so enforcement actions none is an override of enforcement action, is that right?
No. So enforcement action is kind of global. So when the singular field is defined, right,
Mhm.
we enforce the current behavior no matter what. So if enforcement action is defined, singular field is defined as deny, we deny everything just
Okay.
as we do right now.
Okay,
And now if singular field is also defined and this array is also defined, right, we enforce whatever configurations are there in this array on top of the one that we already enforced. So let's say if somebody says webhook deny on this enforcement action, and enforcement action is also defined as deny, then there will be 2 enforcement for webhook, right? 2 deny events for webhook, which in theory is also possible right now if you create 2 constraints for the same resource for webhook. So that is the current behavior preserved, right? Now, what if we only want to enforce webhook deny and exclude this constraint from the rest of processes? Then in that case, we define singular field as none, and that and define whatever we want to enforce under enforcement actions. So that means that configurations that are in the list will only be applied, and we wouldn't enforce everything everywhere just as we do right now. I hope it was not confusing, or is it? So none is not an override, but rather it's an
I
option
think it's
to
confusing. I
emit.
think it's confusing because you're putting the none, like one of, like you're putting the none inside of actions.
So this action will also be the one, this action is enforcement action, right? Like we
Yeah.
are treating both the fields as same. So I should rather say this. So this is the original, like this field and the global enforcement action should be in parity. Whatever we allow there, we should allow here as well, right?
Maybe just walk through some of the examples below that
Yeah.
might make things more clear. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. For instance, this is the examples. Yeah. Okay. So what we want is we want to disable audit for a constraint, right? So we define enforcement action as none, and then we say under the enforcement actions that we want webhook and getter to deny resources. So we don't mention audit here. That means that audit is kind of excluded for this constraint. So this none means that we don't enforce anything. We don't enforce it everywhere, and then enforcement action means that we enforce this constraint on webhook and getter.
So what
Same.
happened if you were to omit enforcement action in that example? Will that default to deny, or?
Yeah, so if missing enforcement action means it defaults to deny as the current behavior. You have to explicitly mention it to be none in order for only enforcing the options in enforcement action.
I see. So basically, when you're saying none, it kind of puts it into the inclusion mode. So and then you have to find every single thing you want.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a bit confusing, but yeah.
It's
Because
almost like
I think we said. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say because we made the lack of enforcement action field means deny. That's a problem because then everything is denied by default, I guess.
Yeah. So, but that's the current behavior, right? And
Right. So it's like actions plural is a way to opt out things. But in order to use actions plural, you have to put action singular as none first.
Yeah.
I
And it's a way to opt in rather than opt out.
Yeah, could we name it differently? Because that's kind of
Yeah,
confusing.
yeah, so name is still up in the discussion, but
Yeah, so
that's
something
kind
like
of,
enforcement action, opt out or opt in or something like that. I don't know.
yeah.
Ah.
Right. Yeah, so that was the change in the first design. Do I need to walk through another rest of the examples?
Is there another interesting one that's like
So yeah,
let's
the
see.
one that we discussed was that disable audit for a constraint in a single namespace. And in that one, like we enable audit everywhere and mention enforcement action to none, and then exclude whatever namespace we want to exclude that constraint from. And the second constraint, we define where we enforce the rest of the enforcement points everywhere. And still define enforcement action as none. So that's also kind of, it takes two constraints to achieve this behavior. So that's
So just to clarify, right? So unless you put none there, the singular action always wins, right? Basically,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
let's say
enforcement
if I
action
have, so let's
is
say if I have deny here, even though I have actions plural,
yeah.
it's basically ignored, right?
No, they are not ignored. So enforcement action deny here means the current behavior, and on top of that, this is also enforced.
Right,
Oh,
but
okay, so it's additive together.
Additive, yeah. It's not yeah. So
well, except, I mean, yes and no, except if you have action singular deny, that's on everything. Whereas actions plural deny audit, it's only for audit. So you can't say it's additive because actions plural is a subset of action singular.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
but
not
in terms of
additive,
in
right?
terms of events, you will eventually get a duplicative or more events than you would, right?
Yeah, so the enforcement action on a global level applies to everything, right? It only makes sense if you're saying start small, like none, and then you add on top of it for like specific things, or you start with like dry run or something, and then have some dry run like or sorry, deny on like a gator one.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, you could you could do dry run as well, but
So you can
doing,
do dry runs, and then that would apply to gator or webhook, but only for audit it would be deny.
yeah, but dry run would also apply to audit in this case. Like this is enforced everywhere, no matter whatever is defined here. So it will, so in terms of metrics, it will also increase the metrics for dry run, and then it will also increase the metrics for deny if there is one for audit in here.
What is the point of deny and audit over there? That's just going to be
I mean, that has been the case from the start, right? Like some of
yeah.
these combinations doesn't make any sense at all.
I see. So it was just going to be audit.
Yeah, so this is kind
Any
of just
value.
audit. Like I should have
I see.
done this webhook or like whatever. Publish something.
Wait, don't forget to change it back because
Yeah.
I don't know. This is really complicated. Like I just don't. This is like super confusing for a user.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where the second design that I had discussed below. So in this one, we just add additional field to constraint spec called enforcement points. And then in enforcement point, we define audit webhook and getter, right? And if enforcement point is missing, then we conserve the current behavior where enforcement action is enforced everywhere. And if enforcement points is defined alongside with enforcement action, then we enforce the combination of the both. So we achieve kind of similar thing with this design, but yeah, so this was the other design idea. Max had some Max didn't have any upfront concerns about it, but he said that he has to run this idea through a couple of his colleagues to make sure there are not any issues with this design as well.
Can you give an example of how this one option works?
Yeah, so okay, wait. Yeah. So for disabling audit, right? So enforcement action is right now set to deny because it's omitted. So right now, if enforcement points are defined to webhook and getter, audit is excluded for this constraint, because enforcement point is also an inclusive behavior. Whatever you include there, it will get enforced through that point, right? So disabling webhook means you omit the webhook from that list. So this is like disable audit for a single namespace, right? So we enforce audit and exclude the namespace, and then we enforce deny to webhook and getter everywhere else. So
Yeah, I like this one, but you can't mix and match on this one. It is same enforcement action for whatever enforcement points defined.
yeah, so this is kind of like one enforcement action per constraint rather than multiple per constraint. So yeah, it takes eventually more number of constraints to achieve the same behavior than
Yeah,
the
you
first
would have to
design,
add more. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
because like you want warrant for webhook and you want deny for, let's say, getter, right? Then you need eventually two constraints rather than one, as opposed to the initial design. But it's much simpler in my opinion
Yeah.
I think
but
so
like
too.
we are kind of delegating the load of managing constraint to the users now.
Yep. I agree. I think the same. This is simpler, but yeah, user will have to bear the load. Yeah.
So yeah, these are the two designs that we discussed, that I discussed with Max.
Would the second option give any I mean, for the initial motivations we had on the other dog, would that work for all of them?
Yeah, I think so. I ran through them as well. Only one use case that we had was not achievable in single constraint, I think, and that was this uh, setting different enforcement action for different points.
So these are the only two options, right?
Yeah, we discussed like initial 5 options, if you remember, and then we
Yeah.
decided on expanding the fourth one.
Mhm.
But the alternate design that is here in this doc was not discussed before. So yeah.
So just these two right now, only these two are being considered, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the initial document.
I think option one is pretty confusing, and I will argue that as a user, I can still create multiple constraints, right? That could end up in a confusing state.
Yeah.
So it will be very much like the second option.
Yeah.
Um,
I think this one has the motivations if you want to go through them. Yeah, I think this one was the concerning one for the design. Rest of them are kinda achievable for the second alternate design as well.
So it sounds like we're waiting for Max to check about the
Yeah.
option 2.
Yeah. Yeah, and additional concern on option 2, I haven't given it much of a thought yet, but would be to not include publish logs and kind of a way for users to define how these violations should be consumed or exported, and have additional structure for that particular functionality. Like a user, so user can basically, we can introduce a new API called event backends, and then user can provide specification on that one to achieve the same goal. So it's excluding publish and logs from, or separating publish and logs from enforcement action, because we are not changing anything about enforcement action and just adding the enforcement points for this, which is right now also in the air, the implementation about publishing through constraint. But yeah, that was an additional difference between this and the original design.
Why are we doing excluded enforcement points? So like one is inclusive, one is exclusive.
So yeah, so that we in past discussions we decided right now we are only going for inclusive ones, like inclusive behavior, but as a future functionality, if we want, we could implement the exclusion behavior as well. So yeah, it's just a note in the design
Can you
document.
show me all the possible enforcement points and all the possible enforcement actions?
Yeah. Okay, so
List, yeah.
I think it was here in the 4. Yeah, so possible ones were like pub sub or publish, and then I think Max had logs as well somewhere, and the enforcement points are these 3. So this would be publish, log, and then if we go with the option 1, then none or opt out. Yeah.
You know, not all, like say dry run action, it wouldn't make sense if you opt out audit. If you,
Yeah, we don't know that one. Yeah, this just doesn't
Yeah.
make sense.
Yeah,
I
so
think
some of
any
the
of the combinations,
combinations,
yeah.
some of the combinations don't make sense. Like audit
Yeah.
with deny won't dry run doesn't make any sense.
well, with, right.
I think some of them must be have to be documentation. I mean, any of the options, they're just not.
Yeah.
Will publish work with Gator?
Technically, yes, I think.
Yeah.
And log?
I mean, kind of. If you just don't want the Gator logs, but publish to PubSub or something, maybe. Yeah, like I can see that. But we definitely don't have this functionality today.
Yeah, we don't have. It's just a way to exercise for future needs, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what Max is coming from.
Sure. But it also makes sense to have inclusive first, because we don't have like all the
Yeah.
options supported, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think by default we'll start with just the deny, warn, dry run, and none in
Yeah.
this option. Yeah, and then add publish and log later on.
But none is only for option one.
Yeah, for just for this option. Yeah.
I don't know if, yeah, I still think option one is confusing. Like I would basically have to know I need to put it in none before I can use actions. It's not very intuitive.
I mean, I think it's more like a documentation sort of thing. I think we need to change the enforcement actions name because that is very confusing.
So that's also kind of, yeah, this one, right?
Yeah, so that's more like so the first one is more like on a global level, and then the second
Yeah.
one is more like individual level.
Yeah. Naming things is hard,
Yeah.
as Rita says.
What's the, sorry, I think in the other doc for option two, there was I think you had it hovered over why is a bad idea, like in the other doc,
Uh,
the other doc.
this one?
Yeah, at the top, I think there was a mention of why.
This is an original
Hold
doc
on.
and
I think you
5.
had it. Sorry, go up at the top. I think go down a bit. Okay, a single enforcement action per enforcement plan may not be flexible enough. This is, you said this is option two, right?
Yeah, so option 2, I think doesn't achieve this. So these are the motivations that
Oh,
we
right
set
now
out
this
to
is
achieve.
one action per point. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so do you have I think you had a comparing two options in the other doc. Does it talk about what's the
I
bad? It requires more constraint to achieve same behavior.
Yeah, so for different enforcement action to different enforcement point, we need multiple constraint. Yeah, I guess then this also is true for it. A single enforcement action. Yeah, I don't think this is also.
No, but this is 1-to-1, whereas the like this design is still many to many.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're okay there.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
are.
yeah. I just want to make sure we're not like introducing the same problems here.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm still waiting on Max for approving the second one. I think he ad hocly approved it, but he needed to run this by some colleague of his. So
okay. So I guess we'll come back to this after.
I mean, are you against option one, Rita?
From a user experience perspective, I definitely like the second option better. I really don't think like relying on docs for people to know you gotta like opt out first is not great.
I mean, they don't have to do it. They don't have to do it. Like by default, they can keep using the existing enforcement action, so nothing breaks or changes.
it's if they want a specific behavior, then they want to
Yeah,
opt
yeah.
out.
And then they have to look at the docs if they want that specific behavior.
Yeah.
It's not like we're changing the
I
existing
see.
behavior.
What's the default behavior for the option two? So if
Option,
I just have
yeah,
nothing-
yeah, that's the current behavior as well, right? Like if
Okay.
enforcement point is not defined, then
Mhm.
we just enforce whatever there is in enforcement action everywhere.
I see.
Yeah. But on the user experience side, on the option 2, they have to deploy more constraints to achieve the same thing.
Yes.
So it is not, I mean, it looks better in this like one constraint level, but if you
I
wanted to do like a mix and match sort of things, you have to deploy a lot more constraints. And
I see. So basically today is global, right?
Yeah.
So maybe, so you're saying like in the future for, maybe we'll add a doc that says, hey, if you wanna decrease the scope, right? Here's how to do it.
yeah, I mean, it must have a docs anyway, I think,
Yeah.
for
Right.
its behavior, because it's just confusing.
I see. If you gotta do a docs regardless of option 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Then I guess it's okay. Yeah.
I think we just need to name the enforcement
yeah.
actions better than, yeah.
Right.
Any
Because
ideas?
my point is nobody's going to accidentally stumble upon the action 1 and then they're going to
Show the
confuse it.
example again. I just would need to look at it, stare at it. The example where you had none for the audits.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Disable. Okay,
Yeah.
here, right? Maybe call it enforcement action override or something. I don't know. That's terrible too.
we need change over here and over here as well, right?
Right. Well, really what you're saying is enforcement action is global, right?
Yeah.
So if
yeah,
you
enforcement
could,
action is global. Yeah.
yeah, so that's actually global.
We can do this.
Local.
Mm.
I don't know what that means, but
Yeah.
I like none better than local.
Yeah.
oh my God. Well, let's all think about it.
Yeah.
What's more?
Is there any example of a Kubernetes like there's like a you have to do like individual things?
Maybe void.
No, I mean as in not that field, but the enforcement actions field. Because enforcement actions. So I mean, I wish the enforcement action was called global enforcement action or something like
Yeah,
that.
I know. That's
Uh,
why I was like,
what is the opposite of global?
And I don't think none is a good word actually, because none almost like saying there's no enforcement action at all. That's also confusing.
Maybe omit. I kind of like the word scope, like, because if you look at
Oh, I like that.
like validating a mission config. Hold on, let me pull that up. Where is that guy?
Or an empty string, or a scope. This also sounds good to me.
So enforcement action scope like this.
Scoped with a D.
Yeah.
Because we have like the global namespaces versus
Yeah,
like the
because if you look at like validating webhook configuration, right? The way you kind of strip down is by adding rules and scope, right? So the scope field. So like, here, this is what I'm looking at right now. Give me 1 second.
But I think the weirdness here is it doesn't have to be scoped. If it says scoped is null, but it could also be dry run, right? So that means like that the minimum bar basically is globally dry run. So it's not technically scoping.
Well, you can scope it, but then, you know, hopefully the validation will tell you like your configuration doesn't make sense, or like your field, the values don't make sense.
No, I meant this is like say enforcement action here. You can put dry run, right? So then that basically makes the minimum bar dry run instead of none. Did that make sense? So like globally, everything is dry run.
But there is no minimum bar here, right? Like if so
Isn't enforcement action the minimum bar?
no, so this is kind of enforcing everywhere, and then
Yeah.
this happens, as an additive event, right? So
Yeah.
now in this case, webhook and getter will dry run and deny these resources.
But say for publish, it will be dry run. Say we had publish
Yeah,
enforcement.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying as a minimum bar, right? So, and if you say none, publish would be none, right?
Yeah.
That basically raises the minimum bar to dry run.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
it's not really scoping. Like we can't put scoped as a none thing because it's scoped in any sort of thing. You're just kind of raising the bar.
Restricted?
That means something different.
Yeah, I mean I think the none is the best one so far, but I don't know. So basically, it means we're starting from none, right? No enforcement, and then we're just saying deny for webhook and gator. If we said enforcement action dry run, everything is dry run to begin with, and then we are adding deny to webhook and gator.
I actually liked scope because then in the actions thing could be enforcement action scope. Again,
But
this
it's
is
always
borrowing-
scoped. I think that's the missing sort of thing. It's not like there's a specific scoped value to make it scoped. It's always scoped.
Well, if it's global, like currently it's all right. Again, we're looking at what does it do today, right? Today, enforcement action is all or nothing.
So I think Rita is looking at a perspective from where enforcement actions are enforced, and she's
Okay.
saying that it's enforced everywhere. And then Sholtes, you are saying that whatever is enforced is the scope, right? Like it's minimum dry run, and then so there are two perspectives to looking at the same thing, I guess.
Yeah, because as far as I understand, the whole reason we want to add this, actions thing, right, is to
Limit
reduce
the-
the scope an action applies, right?
Yeah, reduce
So
the
let's say
scope in terms
deny.
of point.
Right, so say deny today, well, as we have it today, is pretty much all the enforcement points, right? Now we want to give users an option to scope down. And so borrowing from validating webhook configuration, the way they do that is by having a scope. You can specify cluster wide or namespaced, right? So we can borrow that same concept here, maybe.
Do they have a minimum bar though? I think that's the thing that throws
What do
this
you mean
off.
by minimum bar?
So that's what I was saying earlier with this. So if enforcement action is dry run today, right?
Mhm.
It will be dry run for, say, for everything to start with, right? In say publish or logs, right? And then we can say, but I want webhook deny, right? So whatever we put in the enforcement action, that's the sort of the scoping, but it's a minimum bar across everything.
Right.
For every enforcement point, it will basically just start off with dry run, right? So that's why in that namespace is already, so it's not really, it doesn't start with a 0, it starts with something. I mean, it can't start with 0, but with none or whatever.
Yeah,
So that's why I'm saying the scope doesn't make sense so much because it's already sort of scoped with dry run, for example.
I don't think that's any different from what we have today, because today you can only specify one action anyway. I don't think this proposal looks at the minimum bar. There's no such thing that I can tell.
No, in this case, the minimum bar is the global one, which is the enforcement action. So it's basically globally sets it to dry run or globally sets it to warm, right? And then you can make it even more restrictive. We don't scope it down unless it's none. So it basically it's additive, not like so I think the WAP stuff is quite a more restrictive, so like a funnel. Ours is more is the other shape, I think. Let me maybe make the so I'll edit this one just so I'm going to leave that. So say we start with dry run here, right? And then we add it, right? So in this case, say we had publish and logs. I'm making up an audit as other options here, right? So in this case, so to start off with, it's right. So publish will be dry run. Logs will be dry run. Audit will be dry run. And then webhook will be deny, and Gator will be deny, right? Does that make sense? That's what I'm saying, that this one is like a minimum bar. And if you say to this one to warn, then these will be warned, but these will still be denied.
Yeah, I see. But I think that's the confusing part, because I think earlier, Jay, you were saying like option one is unless you put none, actions wouldn't take over, right?
Yeah, so in this case, webhook will be deny and warn, and getter will be deny and warn as well.
Yeah, so it does it still the enforcement action
Yeah.
still works. It is not
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah.
So this
That's
will
what I'm
be the
saying. It's a
test.
minimum bar. It's not a hey. It's only effective after saying none. None is just makes sense because the minimum bar is none, and then you individually build it up.
And that to me is the confusing part, right? Is I feel like either you have global or you say, I want to opt out global and I want to specifically define what the actions are for each enforcement point. Because otherwise you're like doing a mix and match, right? It's like you want to have the global thing and you want to have the scope down thing.
Yeah. So global thing is more like a minimum bar across everything.
I get that, but isn't that confused? Isn't that
Yeah,
like
I don't think we can get away with it because we already have it today.
It's
no,
not.
no, you can. You can basically say either I have global or I opt out global and just have scoped. You know what I'm saying?
So if
Oh, I see what you're saying.
if
Okay.
there is scoped here, then this 3 goes away, and only these 2 are there.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
scoped down to these 2 rather
Right.
than everything.
That makes sense to me. I mean, that could be another sort of option, or like option for option one, I guess.
Right. So basically you either have global
Yeah.
and we don't care about the actions stuff at all, or you have scoped and then the actions kick in.
Yeah, I kind of like that. So like that, like
Yeah.
scope enforcement actions, and then
Right.
the specific word that kicks it off is scoped. So we would have to add one more, which is scope instead of none, and then
Right.
Yeah.
we kind of build it up from there.
Yeah, that likes there I like that. That
So
makes
let's
sense.
say if your enforcement action is not scoped, then we basically just ignore the scope stuff at the
Yeah,
bottom.
and then we can name the scoped enforcement action to make it more specific.
That's
And
right.
this is only valid if this is called scoped.
That's right.
Yeah.
So this only kicks in if you care about this feature. If you don't care, then it's
Yeah.
just the global one that you've been using.
Yeah, and then if you put in scoped here without scoped enforcement action, it'll be like a validation failure.
Okay. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, that also works. I think that
I like
it
that.
kind
I
of
like
improves this.
Because I think mixing them is just we're gonna have a bad. I think like even testing is gonna be hard if you mix them, like if you support both.
I mean, the downside of that is there's going to be a lot of values here if people want to scope it but add it for everything?
Yeah.
Or I guess we can use star here. Can we use star?
I mean, you can add more.
Yeah,
right?
enforcement point is inclusive. You can add star there. Yeah,
I see. Okay, then yeah, you just
part of
basically
it.
put a star on it.
I feel like this is like a combination of option 1 and option 2,
Yeah.
where you get to put everything, you get to define everything, but in a single constraint. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think I like this one the best. Yeah, I like it.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna update the doc and then ping Max.
Do you want me to delete this part, Jay, just to avoid the confusion, or keep it?
But
Keep
can
it
you
for
change-
now.
Can you change to scoped enforcement or enforcement action scoped or scopes or whatever, just the word scope in there so that it doesn't just say actions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where?
This, right?
Oh, here? Yeah.
No, the top part. The scoped. Yep, that one. Like the thing on top, it still says enforcement actions, right?
Oh yeah. I'm gonna
Oh
make
no,
the change
this
to
is the old
whole,
one. This is the
yeah.
new one. This is the new one.
Sure.
Yeah, ignore this top part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm gonna make the change to the whole doc
Okay,
to
sounds
get
good.
this. Okay, cool. So I had just one question. Do we want implementation details on this doc as well, or if Max finalizes this design, we just discuss it one more time and then I start the implementation?
I think you can tag Max on this new proposal in the doc and get his feedback. We could probably do this asyncly. And then next week we can come back and just make a formal discussion and decision, hopefully.
Yeah, so I'm discussing a point after that, right? If we agree on this design, do we want implementation details on the design doc itself, or I can just start off with changes and then we can discuss the design, implement details on PR, implementation details on PR.
So if Max agrees, just put like a high level implementation details on this one, just so I think it will make your life easier too.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be like, I'm gonna change this sort of specific line or whatever. It just have to like change this to this, or add the scoped enforcement actions as a spec or whatever.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Cool. Are we okay with this part then? Yeah.
I have just one more question. Then action and enforcement action. So these part and these should this to be the same thing in this case? Or we are diverging between them then?
I think I'm okay to change it because we are going to be adding more things in the enforcement action, like scoped. So that one won't be valid in here.
Yeah.
You can we're scuffing it down so much.
No, I think action sounds better, right?
Yeah, actually, I like action.
Yeah, because then you don't get confused which enforcement action we're talking about.
Okay, so this will be a completely new field rather than reusing this one.
I don't think you can reuse that, no? Because that one is global, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to reuse that.
And also we have like a specific behavior for that today. You're just adding a new option, which is scoped, right? And in the scoped enforcement actions, a new field that can be individually configured for stuff. But and then just to clarify, we are going to have like weird behavior. Say if you put deny and audit in here,
yeah.
like there's just no avoiding this. You're good with that, right, Rita? Just to check.
I'm sorry,
Like,
repeat. I'm sorry.
Deny and audit. There's just no avoiding this behavior.
Right. You can't. I think all we can do is validate and validate the constraint.
Yeah, I mean, how do we want to validate? Do we want to? Is it an invalid thing, or it's just going to act as a dry run?
I would think invalid, like actually reject the
Like fast fail, right?
The
This is
CR
a
is
deny and audit is an invalid value. Please try again.
right. I think that makes sense because it's a emission request, emission time validation. And you want to block that as soon as possible, right? You don't want users to look at it at runtime.
Yeah. Okay. I think they
But
have a
then-
list of things that doesn't make sense and we want to validate.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
so-
there is a list of things that won't
Yeah.
make sense. Yeah.
So that what makes sense with audit? Like in terms of enforcement point actions.
What are the other actions again? Dry run, deny.
Yeah, deny, dry run,
It
warn.
doesn't make sense for warn, I guess. That's it, right?
In future it would be publish, logs. But then if we start off with these three enforcement action, right, the audit doesn't make sense for any of them, then how does one enable audit?
Just put dry run on audit.
No. Sorry, I may be confused, but audit should work for all of them. It's that dry run won't make sense for
I mean, dry run doesn't make sense for most of the things.
for other, right.
Like publish or logs.
So publish and logs are action. So dry run doesn't have to relate to publish and logs, right? Points has to
Okay. Sorry,
relate to
I get-
publish
okay.
and logs.
Yeah, my bad.
Like dry run doesn't make sense for webhook, right?
Oh, it does.
It does.
It does?
Because
we use it
we
today.
increment metrics, right? The metrics output.
No, as in like we basically just let it through and do audit do its job. We have enforcement action dry run today that works with that.
It works with webhook.
Yeah, but it's just
Doesn't
the
do
K
anything.
apply
But-
nginx.yaml, it just goes through.
Right,
Right.
but webhook doesn't do anything.
Yeah, webhook is in the dry run mode, so which means like don't deny it. And then if it's warned, then it warns it, and then denies it.
We're gonna have to think about this one.
Yeah, let's just think about it and create a list of that doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense.
But in my opinion, when you have something in the enforcement point, it's actually doing something. Like say deny for webhook is actually blocking it, right? Like it is actually, right? Whereas like warning webhook is returning a warning message. But for
Yeah.
dry run for webhook, it doesn't do anything. So when you say
Dry run, sorry to cut you off, but I think dry run for webhook increases the metrics for dry run actions for the associated webhook metrics.
Yeah, so it does a log action still, right?
Okay. Yeah, so
Probably should have been not called dry run is the problem, but anyway.
And also it just lets the workload pass through. That's what it does. It does something by not doing anything.
Yeah, but when it lets it go through, doesn't it like it logs and increases the metrics, right? So it's like I
Yeah.
said, we really shouldn't have called it dry run. It should have been called log only or something and called it a day.
This is more like a philosophical question. It's like
sure.
At least I always thought it logged if you added the in dry run and you had the webhook enabled, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think it's a log metrics thing. You're right.
yeah, we have log denies, but I don't know if we have dry run denies. I think it's just maybe metrics and audits, but audit is separate in here.
All right, please gather this information and put it in the doc. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we're at time. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I
So
gotta-
deny and warn we want to run. Yeah, sorry. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
so
get off.
I mean,
deny
it-
warrant for audit,
it-
it doesn't
it-
make sense.
like,
See it, Rita? Yeah, is that clear, Rita? Sorry, Jay?
then what makes sense? Just dry run for audit makes sense.
Just dry run for audit makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
So yeah, let's just document the ones that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then yeah, go from there.
Well, and I think what I was saying is dry run may still make sense even for the webhook, because if somebody disables audit, you may still get the webhook then logging it, even if it only happened one time. So it may not. I'd have to verify that, but that was my impression of what it did.
I think it makes sense. I mean, it lets the thing go through. The metrics increases. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do something, but so deny an audit for warn. There's apps. So for
Yep.
audit, there's no. It doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't like it deletes it or something.
Yeah.
Cool. I got to run too. Bye.
Yeah. Are you okay to do this, Jay?
Yeah.
Just didn't update this. Okay, cool. And then let Max know, and then we can go from there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. Bye.
Bye.